Welcome to Happily Ever After is just the beginning. Keeping your relationship not just together, but happy, and we mean truly happy, is part art and part science. You've come to the right place. Here's your host, Leslie Dories.
My husband, who works in corporate America, often gets surprised when I describe what's happening at his company in terms of relationships. But the truth is, everything in our lives is a relationship of one form or another. The depth of the interaction may vary, but we are in some kind of relationship with every person we encounter, including ourselves. And one universal truth is that the way you approach any particular relationship is the way that you approach all of them. The rules that you adopt for one will define the rest to some degree or another. And another universal truth is that most of us have no idea which rules are productive and which aren't. So to help sort some of this out, I'm pleased to welcome back empowerment coach and the author of, I love this book, Man School, Relating with Women in the hashtag #MeToo era, Matthew Solomon. Matthew, thanks so much for coming back on the show and talking about something that I know is near and dear to your heart.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me back. It's great to be here.
So again, you wrote an article. You write lots of articles. I think they're great. People should read them. The secret to having all areas of your life work. And this was an article you wrote for the Good Man Project. And what is this secret to having all areas of our lives work, and why does it matter?
Well, it's so great because, you basically, in your introduction there, the secret is recognizing that we are in relationship with everything, relationship to everything. And so, usually when we hear relationships, we think of the romantic kind. But there's relationships to our partners, there's relationships to the business, there's relationships to parenting or our children, there's relationship to money, there's relationship to our community. And so when we can approach things from who am I in relation to this thing, or what is my relationship with this thing, and how does it work, and what are the things that work and don't work, and how can we improve it, then we can actually do something about it and move actually deeper into relationship toward partnership, which is when I work with couples, and actually, when I'm coaching people around business and all that, it is really about partnerships where we're joined together for a common goal and working together in that way.
Well, and this is such an interesting topic because, I remember having this conversation with my husband, and he was describing some aspect at work, and I go, yeah, this is happening, and this is happening, and this is happening, and why it's happening. And he looked at me like, honey, it's a big family. Here's the mom and dad, here's this, and here are the siblings, and he was like, wow. And I said, yeah. I said, that's why when we're out in public, I'm always watching, because I'm always watching every single relationship. And, and I know that you're in L.A. and I was born and raised there, and the one relationship people in L.A. have is with their cars and the people next to them. And that's a relationship. You do have and people don't think about this. And what does this mean? And we always think about relationship as being people who are close to us in some way, which those are relationships and probably the ones that matter the most. But everything's a relationship. And I guess it's one of those things where it doesn't come as a surprise to me because that's what I do. But it seems that's it's like, oh, well, I don't have a relationship with that person. Oh, really?
Yeah, and that's one of the things. There's that saying, know thyself, and if we take this to like a metaphysical level, where the purpose, quote, the purpose of our existence is self-realization, right? Is knowing ourselves, and so the only way to really know ourselves is in relation to other things, because otherwise we're just like we just are, which is a great place to be. Also, like if you can get into that space. But I remember, I trained and taught martial arts for 11, 12 years. And we used to talk a lot about the personal development side of the training in addition to the punching and kicking and all of that. And so, the sensei of the school would often say, you know what, it'd be great to be a monk on a hill and just meditate, but where's your real growth if it's not in relation to other people, if we're not dealing with the challenges of relating and knowing who we are and how we can show up and choosing, okay, if this person really frustrates the heck out of me, where can I be responsible and what can I do, personally to heal that or transform that, or, and that may look like learning, breathing techniques or centering myself or doing, some, different kinds of practices, or it could mean I'm just not going to interact with that person anymore because they're not healthy for me.
Right. Or what most people try to do is to just get them to stop doing whatever it is they're doing, which usually just ends up frustrating, even more. And I really like that idea. You painted a really nice picture, at least in my head, about, the guru on the mountainside who's just sitting there meditating. And it's like, well, yes, but he or she, depending on the gender, isn't really growing because they're not interacting, and I think that's, it's one of the reasons why one of my favorite expressions or quotes about marriage is, marriage is our last best chance to grow up, because that's really what that is. It's about, okay, here's somebody who's challenging me, sometimes in positive ways and sometimes in not so positive ways, and it's what I want to do about it. So, I'm always loving the divorce excuse of irreconcilable differences. Well, it's like, it is those differences. It's you're different from me. Now what do I do with that? Mm-hmm. And it's, and then it's the, well, if you would just change and be more like me, everything would be great.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Which, in those terms, I don't have to grow. Which is kind of an interesting, and I do think that's, where a lot of people, they kind of want to stop time, I guess maybe, 2 months after the wedding. I don't know. I'm not quite sure how far we want to give people.
It's interesting you say that, and of course, because that's, this is what you do, but yeah, 2 months, I was married for 9 years, and I've been divorced 7, and, the first 2 months, I was like, yeah, I'm on top of the world, and then the 2 month mark, it was like, oh man, I can't do anything right, and the whole nature of the marriage had shifted. Which is really, really interesting. There is something to that.
Yeah, and the thing that gets to me is that it seems to come as a surprise, and because I've had people ask me if I did premarital work. I said with anybody who is interested in doing it, but most people think, oh, we're in love, it's all going to be wonderful. Yeah. And then they hit that point, and they don't realize that, oh, by the way, every couple hits this point sooner or later. And then it's, how do you know what to do? And I think this kind of sort of brings up the next thing I wanted to ask you about your article, and I have to laugh because in your article you talk about being in Hollywood, and I was born and raised in Los Angeles and knew several people in the industry. And, and it really is a business filled with nepotism. You actually really do have to know somebody almost to get into the business. But you actually talk about that expression about it's all about who you know. And you put an interesting spin on it. So what does this term mean to most people, and how is it that they're getting it wrong?
Well, the it's all who you know. My experience has been, people show up to Los Angeles, Hollywood. Let's show up to Hollywood, and they just go on this big spree of who do I know, who am I going to meet? I'm going to go to every party, go to every hot spot just to meet people and meet people and meet people and meet people and collect contacts and cards and whatever. And I shared in the article how I'm a filmmaker. And I've had people who I don't really know that well. I know them from social media or whatnot, and they land in LA and they're like, I'm here, hire me. And I'm like, I don't even know you.
Right.
You know, I don't know really anything.
I know of you, but I don't know you, which I think is really kind of the point you are making.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like I know your avatar photo, your 1-inch square picture and your screen name, and we've tweeted or chatted a few times, but I don't know if you're somebody that I want to spend 2 weeks or 3 months on a set with, and what you can deliver and what your skills are, and more to the point, are you somebody I want to spend time with? Because you could be super talented, but if we just don't jive, I'm not really going to want to work with you. So that's a thing. Where we get it wrong is we think we just have to meet people, and it's throw stuff against the wall and see who sticks, and then you can approach whoever. Oh my gosh, there've been, back when I was an actor, I would take these acting classes, and they would say, okay, write a list of 100 people that you know in the business, and then just start reaching out to them.
I hate that.
Yeah, and I was like, I know I've met these people, but I don't know these people, and so I think that's where it goes off the path. Is it would be much more beneficial to be building relationships, not from a place of what can I get from you, but who are you, and what are you interested in, and is there, how deep can we go in learning about each other?
Well, and that's so it sounds like it's more the quality of who you know, not the quantity of who you know, because I know that, in business, I was like, we have to go network, and you have to meet all these people. And whenever it's like, it's that make a list of 100 people you know and contact them. It's like, okay, first off, they're not, and my response mostly is, they're not going to know me from Adam. Why would they bother spending time talking to me? Mm-hmm. So I kind of come at it. I mean, of course, I'm also an introvert, so that's a whole nother thing about networking. But I mean, and the thing about introverts is we would rather be with a small group of people and getting into a really deep conversation than being at a at a nightclub where there are 500 people dancing. It's like, oh my God, that's my nightmare. Don't make me go there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so is it? I mean, I'm bringing up introverts and extroverts, but is it also, is it something about, is there a fear factor involved? I mean, I know that one of the buzzwords of today, and it terrifies people, thank you, Brene Brown, who I actually adore, but this whole concept of vulnerability. And that's how we know people, is to share stuff with them. And, but that's scary stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it can be. It can be, and then there's a point at which if you're practicing being vulnerable and open, you don't have to share the thing that happened to you when you were 4 years old or that kind of thing, right? I mean, but you can share what your experiences have been, what you're excited about. A lot of times we think vulnerability, and it's like, oh, I have to share all the deep, painful, dark stuff. No, you can share the happy stuff and the excited stuff and the things that really inspire you. I mean, because we are taught, or at least I was taught, to hide that also. Don't be too excited. Don't show them, you have something good going on. Those sorts of things. And so I think it's just being more real is what authenticity is to me. It's just being yourself and being true to yourself.
And understanding that, one, if I show up authentically or you show up authentically, then that could challenge somebody else. They may not like it. They may not be interested. Like you said, do I want to spend 3 months on a set with somebody? And so that again is the other thing, is that it's okay if I'm not everybody's cup of tea. It's okay that if somebody doesn't want to spend 3 months on a set with me, because I may not want to spend 3 months on a set with them. So we're good. But it's this concept of really connecting And, it's one of the things, going back just momentarily to the corporate world, where, and I use this with people who work in the corporate world. I said, well, do all your colleagues or do all your coworkers react the same way that you do to everything? And they'll go, no. I said, so why do you think your spouse would? And they kind of look at me like, oh, or you try to get, you're trying to get your colleagues to buy into something. And it's like, well, yeah. And one person, maybe more time off would be what they're interested in, and another person might be more interested in money. I mean, we have these different needs that make us different. We're not all just lumped together. And I think, to me, life is kind of learning how to navigate through this.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that, because you mentioned this earlier when we were talking about marriage, about, I wish you would just do things the way that I would. And what's really great about that statement and about what you were just saying is we grow up interpreting our experiences the way that we do that. And so, my interpretation of things, my needs, my desires, what I think about certain things are just going to be different from yours. And we could grow up in the same house with the same parents, with the same. I was in a seminar one time, and there was 4 siblings, and they were all older, like adult. I mean, so
right.
One was in his 50s, one was in his 48, the other was 45, and then the youngest was 39. All 4 of them grew up in the same house. Their parents went through a divorce when the youngest was 4. All 4 of them blamed themselves, but for vastly different reasons. One was like, if I was just, the oldest was like, if I was just strong enough to keep the family together. And the next one down thought, if I was nicer to my dad, he would have stuck around. And so, it was so clear how they all had the same experience, but they all interpreted it differently, and they all made it mean something different about them. And so then you take that into a marriage, and, I have all of my own crap, and you got all of your own crap, and the way you handle it is probably going to be different than the way I handle it. But the key is that neither of us is right, neither of us is wrong.
That
it just is. And so
yes.
Then it's like, well, can we work together?
Right.
Can we work together with this? Yeah.
And, and it is. And I'm so glad you said that, because it is just an is. Your experience is your experience. Mine is mine. And that's just an is. It's not, there's no judgment to it. I mean, there's no right, there's no wrong. And I think that is one of the biggest challenges in many, many relationships, is because, there is this different experience, and I don't understand it, and that makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So this is Happily Ever After is just the beginning on webtalkradio.net. I'm Leslie Dories, and I'm talking with empowerment coach and author Matthew Solomon about how to improve all the relationships in your life. And if you find yourself struggling in or repeating the same unproductive behaviors in relationships, I want you to know that it does not have to stay that way. Learning how to be a good friend, partner, or coworker is possible, and I'd like to help if you're interested. So you can give me a call or send me an email and take advantage of my no-obligation free strategy session. You can reach me at Leslie, Lesli, at foundationscoachingnc.com. That's FOUNDATIONS, coaching, N as in Nancy, C as in Charlie.com, or you can call me at area code 919-924-0463. Again, 919-924-0463. So I want to get back and ask you, Matthew, a very important question, because in the article you spend some time talking about this, and you talk about knowing ourselves. And that reminds me of years and years and years ago. I'm not even going to tell you how young I was. And my mom handed me a book called How to Be Your Own Best Friend. And so, and I think it has that same thing about why is it important that we know ourselves?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. If we don't know ourselves, we're not going to know our partners. We're not going to know what we need and what we want. You know, we don't know what feels good to us. One of the things just in my personal life is I grew up not really having boundaries and letting everybody in, and not really knowing who was good for me and who wasn't, and what situations were good and what wasn't. So I just kind of bounced around and and got my butt kicked a lot, literally and figuratively. And so, the more that we, and we have, we're always our worst judges of ourselves.
Oh, yes.
And people judge us, and so the more that we can stop and breathe, and whether it's meditating or journaling or just, I do this once a month where I just have a day of silence, and there's no technology, no TV, I don't talk to anybody, I don't listen to music, I just spend the day in silence, and it really helps me get tuned into myself, in regards to what is working for me and what isn't, and what feels good and what doesn't, and what are the things that I'm needing to figure out, and what are the best paths to take. And so if we don't know that for ourselves, then when we come into relation with somebody else, either we're imposing our stuff on them unknowingly, or they're imposing theirs on us, and we're just caught in, like I used to surf, you get caught in just, when you get the washing machine cycle, we're just getting tossed and tossed and tossed, versus knowing, okay, this person feels good, so I'm going to spend time with them. This person does not, so I'm not going to spend time with them, and so on and so on.
Well, and that's a really interesting perspective, which I really appreciate, and I do think that it's a very difficult one, because you're talking about just that inherent, how do I feel when I am with this person? And, I'm self-disclosing a little bit, the times that I have found myself slightly in physical danger, not full danger, but just like, whoa, I'm in a situation I don't really want to be in, is when I did not listen to that little voice that said, this person does not have your best interests at heart. But we get the shoulds, and I remember when my kids were little, because I had this self-realization, I made a promise to myself that I would never make my kids do anything, go with anybody. It's like, no, you don't have to go give Aunt Jenny a hug or whatever. I mean, it's like if they had something, it was like I was going to honor it. I might not feel it, but it was like I was not going to train that out of them, because we do that. It's like, and then there's a great Southern expression about, so-and-so, oh, they mean well. It's like, no, they don't. No, they don't mean well. And to try to but that's what we're told. Oh, that bad behavior, oh, they don't mean it. It's like, I'm sorry, yes, they do. And then that's a disavowing who we are, and that's how we end up in relationships that aren't really very good for us.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and then, like you said, this is part of how, if we don't know ourselves, it's really hard to find the people that we should be hanging out with. Because, well, I need to be like this to be accepted by that group, or I need to be the other way. And it's, I think you mentioned the word earlier about being authentic. And I remember being in high school where, of course, you had all the cliques. You had the athletes, and then you had the nerds, and you had the band people, and there were always certain people who could easily flow between all those groups. And they were recognizable in all of them. It's not like they didn't change their personality or anything. And as I look back on it as an adult, I said those were people who knew who they were authentic, and they could engage any of these people and stay who they were.
Yeah.
And so, to me that's the definition of authentic. And they were in relationship with all these other people. So how can people do this? Because I know there's a lot of socialization, there's a lot of fear. It's like, well, if I'm not this way, then this person isn't going to like me. Or like you were talking about, creating a boundary. So to protect yourself, which is what we all need to do. But how do we do that? Because when we create boundaries, other people don't like them.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Well, the right people, quote, right people, will appreciate that and will respect your boundaries. And the people who benefit from you not having boundaries are going to push back or disappear or, because they don't like it. What I do for myself and what I do with my clients is, first of all, we have to get to a place where we're okay spending quiet time with ourselves. Whether it's meditating for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or taking a day of silence or doing a 10-day silent retreat or something like that. We have to decide that this is something I'm going to do for myself to benefit myself because it's healthy for me and do it. And the first thing we get to decide is that there's nothing wrong with me and who I am is perfect, whole, and complete. And, because you mentioned being an introvert. I'm an introvert, and I was always super quiet. And in my 20s, my friends called me Quiet Maddie, and they would literally, my best friend's girlfriend would always be like, have you said anything in the last 20 minutes? And it would drive me nuts because I was like, I was hanging out with a group of like Italian East Coast guys who just talk and talk. And I was raised to be very polite, and so I would, there was really nowhere for me to interject, and but what I did was I listened, and who I am for people now is like anybody can say anything to me, and I can hold space for it, whether it's deep trauma and grief or really intense anger or whatever it is, and so. And I can create myself to be extroverted when I need to, when I'm on calls or on a, speaking on a stage or, anything like that. And so, we get to pick and choose who we're going to be in any given moment, and there's nothing wrong with us. And then we get to sit and spend time quietly and meditate or journal and really be introspective and ask ourselves questions. What's important to me? Why am I feeling this way right now? What is it that I need more than anything right now? What do I want? And then just being willing to write down whatever comes up.
And the more that we know that, the more that we can find the people who are best suited to us, and that doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with other people. It just means they're not well suited for us. People talk about finding your tribe and finding where you feel loved and supported and accepted. And one of the things that I ask when I'm seeing individual clients, where I don't usually do this when I'm doing couples work, but when I'm working with somebody by themselves, especially if they're wanting to be in a relationship, I always ask them, when you are by yourself, do you like the company that you're with? And if the answer to that is no, I tell them you're not ready to be in a relationship. If they say yes, I said, okay, now you're ready, because you're not looking for somebody else to fix you, quote unquote, or fill the hole inside. It's like, no, you're actually comfortable in your own skin. You've got enough sense of who you are to be able to judge, is this person somebody I want to get to know better, or is this person just passing through my life and I can just wish them well on their journey? Because not everybody has to be in our lives forever. But the whole thing does start with ourselves, because otherwise we end up just being a reflection of other people, which I've learned over time people get really tired of.
Yeah.
And so I find this whole process, of course, I'm not, and as you were describing, a day of absolute silence, it's like, oh my, and I'm an introvert, I'm going, I don't know if I could do that. But mostly because I think it brings up, wow, there'd be no place for me to avoid my own thoughts, which is, of course, exactly the reason why one does that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I didn't know how I was going to get through it the first time, and then the next day I was like, oh my God, I got to do this all the time. That was really amazing. And it was hard. It was hard, and there were and I also, for me, I fast during that time also. And so, there's a whole lot of stuff that comes up around, I should have eaten by now. I'm not. And
yeah, your body's going, okay, this is not fun, yeah.
Yeah. And, it's noon, but it feels like it should be 4 o'clock, and I still have the rest of the day to go and all of that. But it's all good, though. For me, it tells me a lot about myself. It tells me about, it's a really good barometer for where I'm at in my life and who's in my life and what I'm working on and what direction to take. And, it's amazing.
Well, and I do think that that's one of the drawbacks to our, wired 24/7 world is that, one, we feel like we have to be on call to everybody all the time, whether it's our partner or our children or our boss or whomever. The idea of just being quiet and disconnected. I mean, I know there's this whole thing about, technology detox, which I think is actually a good thing. It's because it does give us time to get centered and figure out both what's going well in our lives and maybe what isn't going well and what do we want to do with that. But again, and I don't know if you have any words of wisdom around this, because as we're talking about this, what's coming up for me is I'm thinking if people are listening to this, they're getting really freaked out right about now. Because this is we don't in certain aspects, in certain segments of society, I think we do encourage this, but in other aspects we don't. And so, obviously, many people might not be either able or ready to do a 24-hour detox. Where would you recommend they start?
Honestly, I'm an Aries, so my recommendation is just to pick a day and do it.
Well, actually, not a bad idea, even for a non-Aries. Because actually, if you circle out on your calendar, it's like, okay, there's that date staring at me. Okay.
Yeah, and tell somebody you're going to do it so that they can support you in that. So one of the things that came up for me is I'm a parent, and I share custody with my kid's mom, and so I picked a day where they were with their mom, and then the thought is, well, what if something happens, or what if somebody needs to get a hold of me? And so what I did was I told my next door neighbor, I'm doing a day of silence. I'm not going to be on technology. Do you mind if I give your number to my family just in case something comes up? And they're like, yeah, go for it. Right. And so then I'm covered. So if something happens and they need to get a hold of me, my neighbor will know and he'll come get me. And so you set up the support. The people that, my clients who I'm usually accessible to in between our coaching calls, I let them know, this day I will not be reachable. And
don't have a crisis this day, right?
Yeah. You don't get to have a crisis this day. And I let them know. I'll 8 a.m. the next morning. I'm back, or whatever. So you set it up so that you're supported in doing that, and which is great because then you're also taking care of yourself even more by enrolling other people and in creating a structure that has you take care of yourself.
Right, and then in a way that's also like dropping a pebble in a pond, that ripple effect, because now those people go, oh, this is kind of cool. Let me try that.
Right, yeah.
So Matt, unfortunately, we're out of time. Where can people find out more about this concept of real relationship? How to make their whole life work in terms of relationship and other wonderful information that you provide?
Yeah, thank you. Well, my website is coachwithmatthewsolomon.com, And Matthew is 2 T's and Solomon is all O's. So coachmatthewsolomon.com. There's links to all my social media on there. And then I have videos. I wrote a book, like you mentioned, Man's School, Relating with Women in the Me Too Era. And I teach group courses, and I do one-on-one and couples coaching. And I also have been doing a lot of speaking at universities and corporations on diversity and anti-sexism and on those topics and relationship building.
Right, because again, it's all relationships, because human beings are designed to live in community. And for good or ill, and I think there's both, we're no longer restricted to the tribes that we were born into. So we now can choose to be part of several tribes. And the rules for productive relationships are the same for whichever tribe you're currently interacting with. But as we talked about just a little bit ago, I think that the most important relationship for you to master is the one with yourself, because all the others spring from that one. And the question you need to ask yourself is, what do you need to make that relationship really awesome? So hopefully you found some value in today's show, and hopefully you'll keep listening. And until next week, stay loving.